Welcome to our second Riichi Nomi Open Prep Strategy Lecture. Today we're going to be talking about general tournament strategy with Amy, the Destroyer Destroyer of Australia, Destroyer of New York, and Destroyer, most recently, of Montreal. As a former Riichi Nomi Open champion, she'll have a lot of useful hints for us going into this weekend's tournament. With that, I'll let you take it away.
Everyone, welcome. So I'm really excited to teach you how to be me. Not really, but so basically we're going to cover the three major topics today. So the first is knowing the terrain. So this is mainly focused on IRL tournament play and how it differs from playing online and playing in ladders. Then the next section is like knowing yourself. I really believe strongly that this is a big contributor to my success. It's going to be a little bit less technical and more like self-reflection and self-awareness. But I really believe strongly in this. And then the final section is around like accepting the unknown. We all know that Mahjong is a game with a lot of luck, and it kind of ties everything together. Cool. So on knowing the terrain, there's four topics that we'll be covering within this: the rules, time management, score awareness, and win conditions. So as far as rules, this is something you want to be really familiar with. That's because every tournament is slightly different. So before you go in, you really want to sit down with the rule sheet and familiarize yourself with okay, what's the Uma? What's the Oka? Does the game end when someone busts or when the dealer wins in self-fourth? And the answer is usually no to these two questions to give people more time to kind of play through the whole game and win as many points as possible. Another important one is are there red fives? The EV calculation changes when there are red fives versus not. And I tend to find that red fives cause more swing. And when you don't have red fives, it's a bit more of a maybe stable, the wrong word, but it's a little bit more of a defensive game. But of course, there's people who disagree. Some people find that Akanashi is a lot more aggressive. Everyone's just pushing for K10 or for Panya Nomi. So, your mileage may vary on this one. Another thing that's different between tournaments is the structure. So some tournaments, there's a cutoff, and then you have top 16 or top 4, and the scores might reset. And also, there's often a time limit on games to keep things moving IRL. So it's really important to know, after the timer goes off, do you finish just this hand or do you play one more? So I would encourage everyone to go into your email and look at the Riichi Nomi Open rules and look out for especially any weirdo rules. So I call them this because they might just be uncommon, or they might even just be rules that you yourself are not used to. So this is kind of the first audience participation question. What is a weirdo rule for you at RNO? And again, this might not be actually uncommon rule, but hey, maybe this is your first time playing an Akanashi tournament. Maybe you're not used to, a 75-minute timer, what have you. And then how should you adjust your play to account for that rule? So if people want to start participating in chat. Oh, sorry. Disregard what I say about their first Akanashi tournament. That is, RNO is Arca Ari. But again, maybe it's your first pure cumulative tournament, something like that. So yeah, Claire says that she's saying, I think it's different that has no cutoffs for the final. And I agree. This is also going to be, I think, my first pure cumulative tournament with no cutoff for like top 16 or top 4. So, yeah. Andres says that 5 hanchan per day is a bit unconventional, so it might be a bit more tiring, a longer day than you're used to in a tournament. Nagashi Mangan being enabled is uncommon, but hey, Claire says it shouldn't be because it's based. I agree with that. Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to Nagashi Mangan. So Sniper Shot says, head bump is something that they've heard a lot about, but they're not understanding it. And this is super important. Like, now you've identified a rule that, like, hey, you know, it exists, but now maybe you want to get familiar with, like, okay, what does this mean for me in practice? And kind of like not just knowing it exists, but also like the implications of it. So for head bump, just to explain for the room, in case you haven't heard of it either, basically it means no double or triple run. And that means that if someone wins, or like if there are 2 runs, the winner that is next in the turn order from the the person that was wronged will win the hand. So what are the implications of this? Maybe, you know, there's 2 Riichi on the table, and you can tell that like your Shimocha has like a Tanya Nomi hand. Maybe you can I mean, I don't, this is a little bit risky, but you could maybe like try to deal in deliberately to your Shimocha. And even if there's like runs from the Riichi players, your Shimocha will end up winning the hand instead of you getting like run by 3 people. But this would be a pretty pro Sashikomi. I'm not. Don't try this at home, kids. Yeah. Cool. Another widow rule is like it's a bit different that the hanchan ends at the end of the hand, not the hand plus 1. I think this is a really good call out. This is going to be like this is a bit uncommon, so you have a little bit less time than you think. Cool. All right, so like you get the idea that you want to not only identify the rules, but like think through what it means in practice. All right, on to the subject of time management. So one aspect of like IRL tournament play that has a pretty big effect is the timer. That means that like, yes, all last is just the beginning, but you might not actually get to South 4. You may only reach South 3 or South 2, especially depending on the number of dealer repeats during the game. So what I advise is to make the most of your dealer turn. Like if you are, you know, you start the game as west or north seat and your dealer turn comes around, treat it as maybe you're one shot at being dealer and just try to like seize the moment. Also, adjusting the pace of the game is like a valid strategy that you want to consider. This does not mean slow rolling or rushing, but ways that you can naturally speed up the game are like Kawashite, winning fast, cheap hands to shut down like bigger, slower hands, or just bigger hands in general. And then maybe if you're in a comfortable position, you can like assist your Shimocha with like tiles for their Tanya Nomi, or even like further Honitsu if a player in front of you is dealer, and they would take the oyakabari. And then, okay, I don't know why it says pro sashikomi so much in this lecture. I didn't intend for this, but yeah, that's a thing. But mostly like just trying to move the game along and speed up your hand, maybe open it a little more readily. And then to slow down the game, you could do the opposite. So maybe like folding more aggressively. Like if someone calls Riichi, you just shut it down. You don't try to mawashi or push anymore. So you kind of increase the chances that you'll go to exhaustive draw. And also shibori, or like not letting your opponents call tiles after, like, let's say that your opponent opens, they call like a 7-8-9, not dropping a yaku high, or not dropping like 7-8-9 sanshoku tiles, not dropping chanta tiles, and just like choking your opponents and slowing the game down. So yeah. In chat, people are saying like 75-minute rounds are going to catch a ton of people. I agree, especially because at the end of the timer, you will only finish the current hand rather than playing another hand. So this is going to feel even shorter than like a usual 75-minute timer tournament. So if you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend like playing some games, hand shuffle games in person with a 75-minute timer and seeing how many rounds you can get through. Cool. Moving on to I guess like let's pause for questions because I see some activity in chat. Cool. All right, we'll move on to the next slide, but yeah, I'll try to periodically pause for questions. So another really important aspect of tournament play, especially in-person tournament play, is being aware of your own score, because you won't know your exact score all the time, but they're super important for knowing like where you are in the playing field. So what I advise is to keep track of two things. The first is like where you are relative to starting, or like 0 points, basically where you are relative to 30,000 points, as well as like who first places and roughly where they're at. So for number one, it's easiest to just kind of keep a running tally whenever you pay out or you earn some points. Just be like, hey, I paid out roughly, 3K at exhaustive draw. Then I sumoed like 5,200. Then I don't know, rond a mangan, and then that kind of thing. Like, just keep a running tally, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And then for number two, obviously just be in first place, and it'll be easy. No, but basically you don't have to be perfect at this either, but like knowing roughly whether first place is like incredibly far ahead or if they're reachable, like within about 10K, that can be helpful. So that can look like just keeping track of like mangan-ish wins and deal-ins can be enough to get a rough sense of this. Then my next tip is like when you guys write down the scores for OLAS, whether that's SAP 4 or just like at the end of the timer, this is a really crucial moment. Take your time to calculate some differentials in your head. Yeah, like it's just super important. And like, I don't know, there's a reason we write down the scores in IRL play when we get to SAP 4 or when we get to the timer ending. So take advantage of it. All right. So it's time for everyone's favorite, some mental math. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but please read through this scenario and then give yourself like 60 seconds or 30 seconds and just go for it. What do you think your score is roughly going into South round? Because don't take out a calculator because you're not going to be able to do that in the game. I'll give everyone a minute. Everyone is indignant at having to do math. All right, I'm hearing 32K, 39K. It's a number. I'm gonna wait for a few more answers to come in. If you aren't writing your answer now, you are taking too much time. That's just the truth. No, but like something rough. So someone just asked, what if you can't do any of that math? And I would say, that's okay as well. We're still going to be counting our points very, we're going to count our exact score going into South 4. So don't worry too much. All right, some people are saying 32K, 38K, 38K. I'm gonna give the answer. Someone says 36K. The answer is about 38K. So yeah, I think the discrepancies are maybe due to the like Riichi sticks and stuff, as well as Ryukoku. And basically, like, yeah, you would be doing this every round rather than me forcing you to give an answer within 60 seconds right now. But kind of keeping a running tally. And I believe I have to check on this. I actually took these numbers from a like ARMO, a random ARMO game that I played. But you are not very secure in your position. There's one other person near you. So anyway, you get the idea. We'll move on to the next slide. So finally, let's talk about win conditions. So just like in a regular game of Mahjong, you're not trying to win every hand, but you're trying to win the overall game. So it might sound obvious, but it's surprisingly easy to lose sight of how in a tournament, your goal is not to win the Hanchan, but to win the entire tournament. So one thing you can do is scoping your goal down into manageable steps. This is pretty nice in formats with like cutoffs and score resets because you can just focus on the next cutoff. Okay, I'll try to make it to top 16 or I try to make it to top 4. And then in pure cumulative formats, one thing you can do is like aim for an average point gain. So this is actually how I treat kind of the pre-cutoff portion of a tournament with cutoffs. After every round, I sort of see, okay, obviously individuals move around a lot, but the cut line actually doesn't move. Like it's not so volatile. On average, you might find that like, okay, on average, the field is moving up about like 20 points per round or 30 points per round. And so in a pure cumulative format, because you're never going to get that like head-to-head battle, you're really sort of like playing for those averages and playing to beat that average. I hope that makes sense. So even if you take a third or a fourth, but then you make up for it with like a big first, you're still like aiming for an average of like plus 30 points over the multiple games that you're playing. Another tip is to pay attention to who is playing whom. So this is especially applies when you're near the top of the field and two people above you are playing each other. It's more likely that since they're in the same game, one will go up and one will go down. This is a bit more likely than like both of them going up or both of them going down. So that is like something to keep in mind. And then sometimes, and this applies more to like the end game when you're getting near the cutoff or near the final hanchan. You'll just be trying to place above someone at your table because they are above you in the standing. So a few strategies you can use to like target someone or like ensure that you're above a specific person. These are fairly obvious, but like choke their dealerships or like hold completely to them when they're in Riichi if you don't have a fighting hand. Or, as I say, teach them the meaning of Kawashite. Cool. All right, another audience participation. So this is a 3-part question. Feel free to answer like 1, 2, 3 in your chat. But let's say you're in the fortunate position to be me. We are in a tournament that has a cutoff for top 4, as you can see by the 4 spots highlighted in orange. And this is the scores going into the last hanchan before that cutoff. So if you're already top spot, how would you play this final hanchan before the cutoff? The second question is like, what if you're not quite there yet? What if you're in 6th place and with 53.3 points? Then finally, like, how would you play if this was hanchan 6 out of 10, or you're about to go into hanchan 6 out of 10 in RNO 2023, and this is the score situation. So, okay, yeah, the UMA is 15.5. Someone's asking, what is the meaning of Kawashite? Kawashite is winning a cheap hand to like wash away an expensive hand. So if someone's showing like Dora Pon with a Yakuhai, and then you win with Tanya Nomi, for example. Someone's asking if the pairings are public. The pairings are public. I unfortunately didn't attach a screenshot of them. As I recall, the people at my table were 1st place, that's me, 4th place, 7th place, and then someone not in the top 20. So for 1, what would you do if you're already top spot? People are saying, move the game along, ASAP, play to not lose points, move the rounds along without taking too much risk, last avoidance, play defensively, play defensively, keeping an eye on fourth place. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with all of this. And like, one thing I'll add is, yeah, I played, essentially, I was happy taking anything but fourth. For the second question, people are saying, like, let's go, LFG, aim for plus 25 or more. So first in a little bit, basically like not a tiny first. So yeah, people are saying for number 3, if you are in game 6 out of 10, then you are not in the clear. Like everyone's saying, basically try to build more points. Aim to grow the average point per game. Mostly play for EV. Keep pushing. Yeah, I think everyone has the right idea. All right. Before we go to the next section, are there any questions about kind of the like technical pieces we just covered? Typing questions. Rowan is asking, I know the RNO format is different, but how do you play when you've taken, say, a massive Yakuman to the chin and you're darn near the bottom of the standings? Does that affect anything? Yeah. Basically, in short, like anywhere you are in the standings always affects something. But I will elaborate on how you could play in that situation. So, like, if you're down bad, then you're going to need to play for a higher, like, average point gain per game. So, like, let's say you're in Hanchan 3 out of 10 and you're like at minus, I don't know, 100. Like, it basically means that like spread out over the next 7 or 8 games, you're gonna have to make up that minus 100 and then some, right? Like, so think of how the average point game you would have needed if you were starting from 0, and then like add 12 points to each one. So you can see that if you're down a lot early in the 10 games of INO, like plus 12 per game, yeah, it's not nothing, but like it also isn't insurmountable. So you don't have to think like, okay, I need to, only push for Yakuman study now. You can still recover for sure. But once you get, closer to the end, maybe in Hanchan 8, 9, 10, like, then you may need to start, redefining what you're going for at the tournament. If first place is like if there's a very slim chance of you getting first place. Hope that was a good answer. Yeah, and we were going to cover readjusting goals in like the final section about accepting the unknown, I think was the snappy name I came up for it. Cool. All right. Next section is about knowing yourself. So before we get into this, I kind of just wanted to say, like, this is not about one size fits all advice. Everyone is really different. I'm more advocating like self-awareness and knowing how you tick, and then applying that to improve your mahjong play, or like give yourself the best chance of playing at your personal peak performance. Hope that makes sense. So, yeah, and I will kind of also say, like, I am basically a big believer that like your physical body affects your mind. So it may sound a little woo-woo, like mind-body connection, but like this is actually how I approach tournament days. So I'm just kind of sharing the types of things I'm thinking about. So how do you sleep your way to the top? One thing that I want to introduce people to, which you probably already know about, but like basically just saying there's actually scientific basis that it's mostly genetic, but some people are just more predisposed to feel better and perform better in the morning. And some people are like late to bed and late to rise, and they function better this way. And one isn't like morally superior or better than the other, even though society is pretty biased towards morning people. But kind of just take a moment to like honestly evaluate which one you are, and then use that self-knowledge to inform how you approach those like long tournament days. So for example, if you tend to feel better in the morning, then maybe you want to gain an early lead and defend it in the afternoon. If you are a night owl, then like in the morning you're kind of just like hanging in there, and then you're gonna sneak up and take the field by storm in the afternoon. Also important is like if things don't go exactly to plan, that's okay too. Like just because you're a morning person doesn't mean that like you aren't going to be able to gain points in the afternoon, and vice versa. But I find that this has worked for me in the past. And it's just like, yeah, I feel like not working against your body too much is just like a helpful mindset for me to be in. Also, get some sleep, you people. Not to be your mom, but like try to get as much as you can given the circumstances. I won't kind of like belabor the point, but we all know that sleep is good for like mental functioning. So, all right. Let's see. Can we have a tournament start at 7 p.m.? Andres would crush all of it. I mean, Andres, isn't this N League? Isn't that is essentially what this is? um, cool. All right. N League is the night hour tournament. It is. All right. So yeah. I mean, you don't all have to type this in chat, but feel free to share if you're like a morning person, a morning bird, or a night owl. And then maybe think through for yourself, like, how can you take advantage of when you feel best? What are strategies to get you through your non-peak hours? Caffeine is not the only strategy out there. Something that I do is like when I feel myself getting more fatigued as the day goes on, I will just kind of fall back more on like systems and rules of thumb, like really reminding myself like at the beginning of every hand, like, okay, it's E3. I am south. The door is Tuman. And I find that like being more deliberate about that kind of stuff keeps me from making dumb mistakes. Also, there's a reason I leave every meetup at like 11 p.m. It's not to like lock in my winnings or cut my losses. I literally just, my brain stops functioning after 11 p.m. Claire says Amy is always walking away with the points. Exactly. If it works, it works. I don't know what mentholated eye drops are. I hope you guys are being good to yourselves. But, all right. The next slide is on fueling up. So your brain is a hungry hippo. It only takes up 2% of your body mass, but it consumes, I found different numbers, but like around 20 to 25% of your like body's caloric intake. So this is a little bit contested about like how many calories chess grandmasters actually burn per day when they're in a tournament. But something that is pretty established is like a lot of them lose around 10 to 12 pounds over a 10-day tournament because of like how intensely they're thinking, which is pretty metal. So I found that like what works best for me is not getting too hungry or too full. So I will kind of like eat a small amount between every game, basically. And this is a bit different than how I normally eat. I usually eat like 3 square meals, like breakfast, lunch, dinner. But I found that eating like this during tournaments helps me avoid sugar highs and crashes. But again, big caveat to listen to your body. If you tend to lose your appetite because you're like really excited during a tournament and you just don't want to think about food that much, if you feel best eating how you normally do, so whether that's like 3 square meals or, you know, maybe you don't normally eat breakfast. But I found that like this works pretty well for me. If you kind of pay attention to what I'm doing during a tournament, I'm like ducking out for a snack, literally between every hand. Not every hand, sorry, every hanchan. And I find that like keeping a steady intake of food is helpful. Some people are saying bring lots of fruit. Some people are saying that they lose their appetite during tournaments. All right. Yeah. And kind of like an overarching analogy that I tend to use is I'm trying to keep all of my Sims bars full. And that also involves knowing like what fills up versus drains the bars. So like know what fills up your energy bar or your you know, your focus meter. This can depend on whether you're like an introvert or an extrovert. And it can mean striking the right balance for you between socializing between rounds and just taking a moment alone to like meditate, breathe, etc. I didn't put this on the slide, but like, yeah, keep track of your bladder. um, and then touch glass, like maybe leave the building sometimes, maybe. And don't forget the fun meter. Claire is saying for everyone to think about their hygiene bar. Cool. So a question for the audience is like, is there a particular meter that you would like to improve at monitoring and keeping full? And conversely, what are you doing a good job at already, keeping green? This could be kind of, I wrote this question in reference to tournaments, but you know, can also apply to the rest of life. I can go back to the meters. I mean, you don't have to think about these exact ones, but like basically the idea is like bodily needs. One person is saying that they want to improve on keeping their social meter full. Someone's saying like they are pretty good about drinking water consistently, and that also has the effect of getting them moving, getting them out of their seat and to the bathroom. Yeah, this kind of stuff can sound basic, but I find that like yes, focusing on the technical portions like you know calculating scores and making the most of your dealerships, these are a big part of tournaments. But honestly, I am monitoring how I feel a lot during the tournament and just like taking care of my decision making ability rather than any particular decision. Cool. And overall, I would say take it easy. So you don't have to do sort of the like most fancy or proper thing if it is going to kind of put you on edge and make you nervous. So you can build your walls like half and half or a few tiles at a time if you're nervous to like stack it all in one go and potentially knock over all the tiles. You can sort your hand if you want. I know some people say like sorting your hand gives your opponents information, but if you can't parse your own hand, you're not going to play your best. Before you Riichi, you can count your Han on your fingers to keep track of how big your hand is. Managing your own psychological game and feeling that you are playing from a stable basis is worth more than like small marginal benefits from like keeping your opponents from knowing where your pins you are. Yeah, I do count on my fingers under the table. So don't look down there, guys. In chat, a lot of people are saying that they count under the table too. So that was my final slide in the like knowing yourself section. Any questions before we move on? How do you calm yourself down when you're mid hanchan and you realize that your mental is trashed, like you're really jittery or something from too much caffeine? That's a great question. Or if someone at the table is playing in a way that gets on your nerves. Yeah, I would say one thing that helps me is just to notice it in the first place and kind of name it, but also to like not judge it too harshly. Because I find sometimes when I like try to try really hard to push it away, it almost makes it worse. So yeah, kind of like name it and then kind of sit with it. And then yeah, I mean, deep breaths always helps. Um, but yeah, kind of like let's see, what do I actually do? I also try to reframe a little bit. Something that I learned in my college classes about stress is like some stress and nerves can help you perform better. And like not seeing stress and nerves as like unilaterally bad actually helps you like take advantage of it. So, if your heart is pounding kind of hard, you can take that and then reframe it a little bit like, hey, my heart's working so hard to like deliver blood to my brain and make sure that I am like playing my best. So obviously this is within reason, but that is like one way you can do it. Yeah. And then as far as like someone at the table playing in a way that annoys you, I've definitely had this happen, like someone playing really slow or they're like, I don't know, shuffling the tiles aggressively and that annoys me for some reason. Um I guess like yeah, also taking a step back and like I guess this is basically the same advice, like reframing as like, okay, I get a lot of time to consider my next move, or like the tiles are getting shuffled really thoroughly. Um, and yeah, it can like feel semi fake, but it, I find that like it does help, even though it sounds like super cheesy. So there's a good discussion in the chat right now about like, can you sort of be objective when you're mega tilted? Um, I think that like it's very personal. It also depends on the level of tilt. And yeah, I think like kind of bringing it back to what you can control and like what is happening in this very moment. So, something that I like try to do is like I tend to try not to ruminate on what happened like in the past, even if it's like 3 seconds ago. So sometimes I like miss a call, for example, right? And like, yes, I could sit there and beat myself up for missing the tune that was like 2 seconds ago, or I can be like, okay, like focus all my energy on like what I can do now that the tune is dead and gone. So that actually segues really well into my next slide, which is about recovering from mistakes. Yeah, mistakes will happen to you. I make a ton of them. Um, I know that like this list of mistakes might not sound that bad compared to like a Chombo or a Yakuman Duelin, but like I think we can all relate to little mistakes feeling really insurmountable in the moment. And again, like it sounds really cheesy, but the beauty of Mahjong is that every new turn is like a new opportunity. And then the next hand, you're going to get a fresh high pie. Next game, you're going to get a score reset. Um, Even like there are some natural resets in the tournament structure sometimes with a score, with a cutoff and a score reset. So I would say like in the moment, again, um, for me personally, I find that it helps me to just like not replay anything. So you might notice that like after a game, I tend not to recount what had just happened. But this doesn't work for everyone. So it's cope in a way that helps you most, right? Like for some people, venting to other people between rounds really helps them like let off steam. And for other people, like thinking through that again just like works them up. So it's better to keep a focus on what's coming next. Claire's calling me out for sumoing from the wrong wall, which is the opposite of missing a win in a way. That is true. I felt pretty embarrassed about that. I made a lot of mistakes that end the game, including like miscounting the score. And yeah, but we all move past it. Nick is saying, time to print out the picture of a pro chomboing and looking at it between matches. Ossipin Chi as a prime example. I think that's just a dead hand, but yes. And then, as we alluded to earlier in the lecture, like sometimes you need to redefine what winning means or like what your goals are in the tournament. So there's only one only one spot for first place, but there's more than one way to like quote unquote win and get a lot of value out of the tournament and that feeling of accomplishment. So this is like a little bit stolen from Max's tournament strategy lecture from last year. But I think he said it really well. Like, you need to set your own goals. If it's, Hanchan 8 and you're down 200 points, like negative 200 points, then you're probably not going to get first place today. But, maybe you want to get an overall positive score or a place in the top half or the top 100, the top 80, top 40. Maybe you just want to get first place in the last couple games or place higher than you did last year. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can feel like how you played is something you can be proud of. Claire says, in RNO, you can just try to move up 30 placements for more prizes in your prize baggie. Perfect point. So yeah, you don't have to go from like booby prize, second to last, to top 4. And then I just wanted to close out the lecture with kind of a little fun chat about what it feels like at the final table. Honestly, this is when I have the most fun. So if you make it, or kind of the equivalent, like top 8, top 4 in RNO, just take a moment and take it in, enjoy it. There's also this fun element of like all eyes being on you. It can be intimidating or overwhelming, especially when it's live streamed or you're at an auto table in the middle of a room and like 80 people are watching you. But something that I do is like I kind of put myself in the perspective of the audience. Like I love watching Mahjong streams. I love watching M League. I really have fun watching the twists and turns of a final table. So I kind of think to myself like, hey, let's put on a show. Whatever happens, whether I finish first or fourth, it's going to be a fun time for me and the people watching. And then finally, I just try to trust in myself. So yeah, what you did got you this far, so it can carry you the rest of the way. Thanks so much for listening. Any final questions that I can try to answer? Wait, I didn't even know I had an Australia trophy. Gib. Thank you guys so much. Feel free to ping with any questions. Yay.
Thank you very much, Amy. That was a really great lecture.
Thank you guys for hosting and for organizing. I'll see you guys this weekend. Come at me.
Woo!